Pretty 10 o'clock. I'm gonna go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I was just waiting on a couple of the presenters to join. So I think we've got everybody there. So good morning, everyone. My name is Prit Patel, and I'm with the North Central Texas Council of Governments Economic Development Department, as well as the Economic Development District, which includes myself and Lucille Johnson, who's on the webinar with us. We're just so grateful for this opportunity to have the region hear from federal agencies on funding resources and services that they provide. And we want to thank Stacy Webb and Apu Naik with Economic Development Administration for making today possible. In the interest of time, because we do have 4 agencies, 5 possibly presenting this morning, I want to hand this summit over to Apu Naik, who will provide us with a quick introduction to what a regional economic development summit is and the federal agencies presenting today. For all attendees, if you have questions, once all of the agencies have presented, we will move into a question and answer session. So please post your questions in the chat feature of the Zoom. Apu?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Apu Naik. I am the regional integrator for the Economic Development Administration for the Austin Regional Office of the EDA, which covers Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arkansas, and Louisiana. As many of you know, there have been a number of bills in the past few years past coming out of 2, almost 3 years of a pandemic, and now with the country needing to recover economically, lots of new federal dollars out there, right? Between the American Rescue Plan, last year's infrastructure bill, the CHIPS bill just passed a few weeks ago, lots of opportunity and a lot of space in order to help our communities recover. And so with that, one of the resources that the EDA has put together is this Office of Integration, which is a relatively new office, only about 4 or 5 years old. But the objective is to work together with our other federal partners in order to help our communities collaborate, work together, work more effectively, efficiently, to identify gaps for funding opportunities, just to really make accessibility to our federal dollars a little easier. And so with that, each of the 6 regional offices of the EDA has an integrator, and one of the resources that we can help in order to help our communities get access or get their foot in the door with some of these opportunities is to have these regional economic development summits. And we can really tailor these to whatever the needs of your community is, whether it's and we can do them for an entire state. We could do them for just a small community. We can for any real way that you need in order to for us to address specific agencies. If you're looking at very specific targets for opportunities, we can put together panels like that. So this is one of those that we've put together especially for the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and based on some of the needs that they felt like where some opportunities were for their region. We want to also stress, so we're going to hear from some of those federal opportunities today, but then also want to stress that this is definitely not the end. So in a lot of the cases where we have some of these REDs, they just create the opportunity or get the foot in the door for a community to then have follow-up discussions with some of these partner agencies. And then even through the process of going through the application for some of these opportunities, we can assist with helping those. So really it's a connection device, if you will, to help in every step of the process and however you are. So I encourage you, as you hear more from these federal agencies today, to also follow up in contact with us. Contact with me, contact with North Central Texas, with our economic development representative for the region, Stacy Webb, and we can continue to have these. I'll give you an example. In Louisiana last year, we started with a large REDs like this. And then just through requests from other communities, we ended up having about 9 more, in some cases, just with a very, very focused REDs with just one county or one municipality in order to connect them with specific resources. So that's just an overview of what the REDS is. Now I'd like to introduce the first of our federal panel, Jennifer Harris from the NTIA.
Good morning, everyone. I was trying to look through the attendees list, and I know several of you, so it's good. Good to see you this morning. I'm going to be pretty quick. Know that there are more slides available on our website. I am headed out the door here pretty soon to get to the airport, so I'm going to be pretty quick in my presentation. But please do interrupt me if you want with questions on any of the specific slides that I'm sharing. So I will go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see that correctly? Wonderful. Well, we're going to start talking about broadband. So these are previously developed slides that were presented in May of 2022, but they have really great information on them, much of which is based on timelines that we're just at the beginning of. So I'll start with those timelines on where we are with the biggest program from the IIJA, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, this Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. So where we are right now with this $42.45 billion is, if we look at this timeline here, the Notice of Funding Opportunity was released in May. States and territories turned in a letter of intent by July 18th, saying that they did indeed want to participate in this program. Every single state and every single territory did decide to participate in this program. And then there's another timeline spot that's missing right here, just not on this timeline, but by mid-August, every state and territory was to tell the NTIA if they would like access to planning dollars. Excitedly, every single state and territory once again said, yes, we would love some planning dollars to get ready for this program. Why those planning dollars are important, and what comes here next on the timeline is that you'll see here 270 days after states and territories receive these planning dollars, they're going to have a 5-year plan turned into the NTIA. And that's what really is going to kick off the funding that they will then sub-grant to whether that's broadband providers or other organizations that are providing broadband, or whatever that may be that falls within that state plan. So what that looks like, as I said, so every state and territory has turned in their application for funding to do that planning process. Every state will participate in that planning process. And then once that process is complete, they will be able to receive the dollars that are allotted to each state and territory, and then begin making awards to subgrantees. As you see here, those subgrantees are internet service providers, electric cooperatives, nonprofit organizations, certainly public-private partnerships, public and private utilities, public utility districts, tribal entities, and local governments. So how much money is coming? Each state is going to receive a minimum of 100 million. Territories are receiving a little bit less. States like Texas can expect to receive a lot more based on this high cost allocation and remaining funds allocation. So you'll see that it mentions their new FCC broadband data maps. This summer, the FCC started collecting broadband data in a more granular way than they ever had in the past. So instead of census block level data, the FCC has been asking broadband providers for household level data, so that we will have more accurate maps than we've ever had before. Once those broadband maps are developed by the FCC and published later this fall, there will be a challenge period. So something that everyone here should be aware of, that there will be a challenge to the maps. So if something on those maps just really doesn't look right, there will be an opportunity to share about your community and that the connectivity looks different than the way it's posted on the FCC's map. And once we get through that challenge process, the NTIA will then use this data to make allocations by state. So we are looking at sometime in 2023 for those allocations to be determined for states. And that's okay because we do have that 270-day planning process that's going to get started this fall. And so that planning process will be ongoing when those allotments come out so that states can incorporate that into their plans. And that you'll see here that eligible entities, which eligible entities meaning states, so the state of Texas is going to have to document a final list of unserved locations, underserved locations, and eligible community anchor institutions. The state of Texas is currently working on our own broadband map right now that is set to be published in January. So be checking the Texas Broadband Development Office website for that Texas specific map that's coming up. And so these planning funds that I talked about, a lot of states didn't have state broadband offices or any sort of mechanism to handle this type of money from the federal government to get out to subgrantees. So a big part of the planning dollars for a lot of states is going to go to in-office capacity to make sure that we actually have enough staff folks in state broadband offices across the country. Obviously, research and data collection, so going into that mapping process, pre-planning activities for when we actually start awarding grants, training for employees, surveys of unserved, underserved, and underrepresented communities. So this $5 million that Texas will be receiving this fall can be used for all of these activities, and especially local coordination and capacity building. So something for everybody on this call to be paying attention to once the broadband office reaches out for that type of stakeholder engagement. Looking to see. Okay, so no questions in the chat just yet. Oh, how do I change my view setting? I've never had it show up like this in Zoom before, so I'm not sure what I did.
It looks like on the bottom of the slides, there's a place to show the full screen.
Is that showing correctly now?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I don't know. I've never had it show up like that before. So sorry about that. Glad that this is more viewable now. So when we talk about who we're actually trying to serve with these dollars from the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment program, we're really going to target unserved locations first, then underserved locations, and then community anchor institutions. The goal ultimately is to have everyone in the United States have access to broadband at 100 download speed and 20 upload speed. So another big portion of this program that I think is definitely worth highlighting today is that a low-cost option is going to be required of any of the subgrantees. So probably most of you right now are familiar with the Affordable Connectivity Program that's currently being administered by the FCC, which is up to $30 a month toward a broadband subscription. Subgrantees that are going to build out broadband with these dollars can participate either in the ACP or have another low-cost option, and they are going to have to do that in order to be eligible for these funds. So I think very important that it's been included here, that we do need to be thinking about cost along with the infrastructure piece for these dollars. And then this is one of the most important slides, I think, for this group right now. Eligible entities, once again, meaning states and territories, so the state of Texas must conduct local coordination activities as part of the plan development and implementation. So that means that geographic coverage for all areas of Texas. That means rural, suburban, urban, West Texas, the Panhandle, East Texas, the Valley, literally everywhere needs to be touched, not just the major cities. They're going to be looking for diverse stakeholder engagement. So something that everyone here should be ready to participate in to make sure that we really do have true stakeholder engagement. They're going to be conducting all sorts of outreach with different formats, whether that's in person, whether that's on their website, webinars, social media, whatever it may be on the lookout for the Texas Broadband Office to be reaching out to you, asking about your community and specifically what's going on as far as broadband. Obviously, a focus on making sure that and underserved and underrepresented communities are also a part of this process. Robin, yes, I will post a link. I chose select slides today, but these full slideshows are available on our website. So I'll post a link to that before I log off so that you'll have all of these slides. This slide, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, but did want to focus on the fact that though this is an infrastructure program, there is focus on that physical access, there's focus on affordability and on adoption and equity. And so digital skills training is really, really important. Actually knowing how to use the internet if you have it at your house so that you can apply for a job, so that you could work from home, so that you can further your education. All of those are really critical. And all of those are gonna be a part of this process as well. And so kind of wrapping up on the BEAD part here, every stakeholder really is going to play a role in the BEAD program. So whether it's a telecom provider, a community anchor institution, local governments, community organizations, and of course, individuals themselves, we really want everyone to be involved in this process with the State Broadband Office as this 270-day planning process gets started just a little bit later this fall. Internetforall.gov has all of these resources on it. If you have questions about the BEAD program specifically, those can go to bead@ntia.gov. We have a frequently asked questions document on our website that will be updated with future questions. So please submit questions there. And then of course, we do webinars all the time for this program and the other programs that we're currently administering. Very quickly, I'm going to talk about the Middle Mile broadband infrastructure program. This is an active program that's being administered directly by NTIA. So I'll be very brief, but the deadline is coming up. Applications are going to be due September 30th. Middle Mile, for those that don't know, really is that midsection of internet infrastructure where large amounts of data are going long distances. And it's really that backbone where we're connecting last mile, which is to our homes and to our businesses. There's $1 million available in this program that, like I said, applications are due just about a month from now. Little bit more information on what middle mile means. That can be, dark fiber. I think we hear about dark fiber a lot. It can be, wired or private wireless broadband infrastructure. Lots of pieces here go into middle mile, what that could mean. So I think a lot of applications are gonna come in for this program here over the next month. And eligible entities for this program include governments, industry, as in the broadband providers themselves, nonprofits and other associations, or of course, partnerships, again, of 2 or more of the entities listed above. Like I said, it's $1 billion. So that's going to be about 980 million that actually go out to building that middle mile. And the awards are expected to range between 5 million and 100 million from this 980 million available for funding. And just like the last on the BEAD program, internetforall.gov has a lot of current up-to-date information on everything that's going on with the broadband programs being administered by NTIA. Questions for this program go to middle mile at ntia.gov. And once again, of course, we have webinars all the time. I think we still have webinars going right now for the middle mile program leading up to that deadline at the end of the month. And then my contact information is here. I am in Austin. I grew up in North Texas, but I live in Austin, and I am the federal program officer for Texas. So working for NTIA here in Texas, trying to be a resource to all of us here, be a liaison for you to what's going on at NTIA. So please feel free to reach out at any time with broadband related questions. And if it's an NTIA program, we can definitely get you an answer. And if it's a program being administered by another agency, happy to get you connected appropriately there as well. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Jennifer, I don't see any questions in the chat other than sharing the presentation I think that's been requested.
Well, wonderful. Thank you all so much. Sorry I was so quick, but I do need to go run to the airport now. So I'll put that link in the chat, and then I hope y'all have a great rest of your Monday.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Really appreciate you, especially on short notice and on your way to the airport pressed with time. We really appreciate you joining us this morning. And next, we will go to the EPA. And I believe Gerardo Acosta, we will go to you next.
Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jennifer, and safe travels. This is Gerardo Acosta from the Office of Communities, Tribes, and Environmental Assessment, and from EPA Region 6. I'll do my best in providing some of the opportunities available for funding in the 12 minutes that we have. But first, I'll give you an overview of our office and how we are set up. But just so you know, all funding opportunities are going to be available in www.grants.gov. And if you go there between September 23rd and 29, the system will be down. So this is how EPA has the regions. We have 10 regions and our headquarters in Washington, D.C. Our mission is to protect human health and the environment. And currently, the environmental justice is a major priority for this administration. So in our region, we have Texas and the states around Texas. And we also have a U.S.-Mexico border program that assists communities in the U.S., mainly Texas, New Mexico, and then those Mexico states in the border region. Our region has 8 divisions and the Regional Administrator's Office. We report to the Regional Administrator's Office. This is our org chart currently, and my boss, Olivia, couldn't make it, so I'm going to try my best, like I said. And our office works with grants related to environmental education, environmental justice, tribal affairs, communities, and stakeholders within our region. My staff in the EJ and tribal affairs teams, they manage some of these grants, and they're all the officers that also manage other grants. Now, the main sources of funding that we have come from Acts of Congress and President's executive orders that we've heard, the bill and the American Rescue Plan, and most recently the Inflation Reduction Act. But before that, we had the National Environmental Education Act of 1990 that required EPA to provide national leadership to increase environmental literacy. It established the Office of Environmental Education to implement this program's specific mandates that include environmental education grants. And part of me, I'm trying to cover so much, but if you have questions, I don't see the chat, please let me know and I'll try to address them as I go. Then in 1992, we have the Indian Environmental General Assistance Program Act that authorized EPA to provide gap grants to federally recognized tribes and tribal consortia. The goal of the GAP was to assist tribes and intertribal consortia in developing the capacity to manage their own environmental protection programs in Indian country and to develop and implement solid and hazardous waste programs in accordance with individual tribal needs and applicable federal laws and regulations. And like I said, the executive orders are presidential directives and they manage operations at the federal government. The latest rounds of these executive orders have focused on environmental justice. And let me say just quickly how EPA defines EJ as a fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. This goal will be achieved when everyone enjoys the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards and equal access to the decision-making process to have a healthy environment in which to live, learn, and work. Now, the bill provided unprecedented sources of funding opportunities to disadvantaged communities in programs like air, water, and like I said, with ARP and IRA, we have even more funding available. One example on their bill is the Water Infrastructure Improvement for the Nation, or WIN Act, that established the Small, Underserved, and Disadvantaged Communities grants to award funding to states, territories, and tribes to assist public water systems in meeting the Safe Drinking Water Act requirements. Funding under this program supports drinking water projects and activities in underserved, small, disadvantaged communities that are unable to finance projects to comply with these drinking water regulations under this act. The first year allotment is going to be nearly $44 billion. Now, the bill also provides $5 billion over the 5 years, including fiscal year 2022, to replace nearly 500,000 older school buses. Under bill, again, we have opportunities in pollution prevention and brownfield grants programs. In pollution prevention, we have available $275 million, and this is allocated in 5 years of $55 million each. And you might ask, who is eligible for the solid waste infrastructure for recycling grants? Is the states, tribes, intertribal consortia consistent with the requirements of 40 CFR, former Indian reservations in Oklahoma as defined by the Secretary of Interior, Alaskan Native villages as defined by public law. And brownfields programs, we provide funding opportunities for different activities like cleanup, assessment, revolving loans, environmental job training, technical assistance, training and research. Now in February 2022, EPA published a publication about investment to improve the nation's battery recycling programs while promoting the safe handling of used batteries. And the funding is about $25 million.
Gerardo,
EPA, yes.
were you
I'm
planning on sharing your screen?
Oh, I am so sorry. I thought I was sharing my screen all along.
No worries at all. Thank
Oh
you.
my gosh, thank you for letting me know. I thought it was there and I forgot to click on the share button there. Now you should be able to see the current slide. I apologize. Thank you,
Thank
Preet,
you.
for letting me know. Okay, now back on track, I guess, as we continue. I was talking about brownfields grants, and here we have upcoming opportunities that are going to be available in from September to fall of 2022. So just keep that in mind as you are looking into this. And then the latest, or the Inflation Reduction Act, was just signed a couple of weeks ago, and we have given about $1.55 billion for methane emission reductions program, $25 billion for greenhouse gas reduction fund, $5 billion for climate production plans and implementation grants, $3 billion for environmental and climate justice block grants, $3 million for cleaner ports, $1 billion for cleaner medium heavy-duty vehicles, $250 million for environmental product information program, $60 million for Diesel Emission Reduction Act, $40 million for efficient environmental reviews, $476 million for clean air and climate grants, and more information about this IRAS program available in this link provided. And I will look into when I can share these slides. I finished them this morning, so I apologize if they take me a little time to get them to you, but I'll try to be expedited on this. Now to the grants that my office covers. The EJ, environmental education, the GAP, and technical assistance, which also came recently. My staff in the EJ and travel teams manage these grants. The EJ Collaborative Problem Solving Cooperative Agreements, or we call them CPS. They have the EJ Small Grants. We also have the State Environmental Justice Cooperative Agreements, or SESCA. So we have the CPS, EJ Small Grants, and SESCA. And the current RFAs or request for applications is closed, but however, looking to opportunities come up soon. If you go again in grants.gov, you'll see that there will be a new round for the next fiscal year to open these opportunities. In the environmental education program, we support locally focused environmental education projects that increase public awareness and knowledge about environmental issues. These provide skills that participants use to make informed decisions and take responsible actions toward improving the environment. They are competitive grants, and they generally cover 1 or 2 years. And typically, we have about 3 to 4 projects between $50,000 to $100,000. In the gap grants to Indian Pueblos, tribes, and consortia, Region 6 have about 66 tribes and consortia that we provide gap grant funding to address environmental concerns, for example, water infrastructure, solid waste in Indian country. In FY 2022, we will award $7.675 million through this program. Now, following with this administration priorities with EJ, we have the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers, and we call it TICTAC, just to make an acronym that is catchy, and we can share more information as these come up. But what are these? These are a special program that emphasize in underserved communities or those that have EJ concerns, where multiple centers can support a wide range of environmental equity, capacity, funding, and training issues. We just heard from FCC how that's going to support the broadband. This may actually be supported on that as well, as we're using these centers. So they may be grouped by region. They may start with a set of centers to strengthen over time, and then the regional EPA, EJ staff will be the liaisons between the centers and the staff. Why this? And you may ask, many stakeholders have shared in the past that they have this long-standing need gap in federal assistance to support them at the point of source where they see the need. Now, with the historic fiscal year funding, we were able to provide this with the bill and other sources to the approximately $60 billion that we have at EPA. And like I said, this administration priority is going to be equity and environmental justice. So we may have multiple federal agencies also contributing to these sources. So be on the lookout for these. And we are actually, this is going to share the new structure of the EJ grants because of the new funding. And so what we have is about $40 million for EJ grants. And if you compare that to what we had before in 2021, this is more than double. So as you noted before, the RFAs or request for applications is closed, but be on the lookout because there will be a short turnaround. All funds must be awarded by September 30 of 2023. That means the processing of the grants and everything, we have to close them up by September 30 of next year. That means you have another 1 or 2 years to develop those programs and work on those grants. Now the breakdown is going to be 10 for small grants, this EJ small grant, like I mentioned, 10 for the EJ CPS, 20 for the SESHCAS, and the SESHCAS are split into 10 for states and local government and 10 for tribes. And by the way, we have expanded our authority to implement activities under these grants. This is not a new concept because, like I said, we've been hearing from EJ stakeholders for a while, and we finally have the resources to be able to do this. And the previous EJ grants were limited to research, demonstration, training, and educational activities. Now we have expanded that to small-scale construction, refurbishing, mitigation, hazardous waste disposal, and general cleanups and installations. And, the restructuring of these EJ small grants, we're going to work with these either large nonprofits or college universities to then work as the grantee or sub-grantee to sub-award this to directly the communities that need the money and need the work. So this is how the model is going to work. EPA will work with these large organizations, and then these organizations are going to work with the communities. We recognize their expertise, and we want to maximize that, the use of communities. And like I said, these RFIs will be released very soon in either late fall this year. So the funders will be awarded a cooperative agreement between 3 to 5 year project period so that they can continue working with these communities. There's some flexibilities that we may use a hybrid competitive, non-competitive process to select these sub-awardee communities. And the funds for sub-award are going to be up to $100,000 for 1 year project. And the candidates to apply are going to be nonprofits and tribes. The benefits, we have an easier application process for communities. The funds can get quicker to these communities. It reduces the costs and efficiencies, and it improves efficiencies actually on EPA staff and resources. And we have the potential to generate subawards for communities that need, that have little to no capacity. We have heard concerns about lack of EPA involvement, these funds to be indirectly related to high overhead. We're going to address those by subaward model expediting this funding process. This is going to be a pilot, so we're going to evaluate how it goes. We're going to make connections with communities that have successfully done some of these, and we're going to look into how this percentage is being distributed. There's going to be some involvement and oversight and scoring. Like I said, these are competitive grants, so we're going to look into how that works for the pilot. The cooperative agreement programs, the SESHCAS and the CPS, they're going to be at the same rate, at least double, like I said, from those in 2021 levels. The period will likely be from 3 to 5 years before they was shorter than that. And again, the RFAs will be open in the fall of 2022. If you're a nonprofit, U.S. territory, a state, local government, tribe, or U.S. territories, you're eligible for this. In the timeline, again, we're fixing to award in the CPS about 2 agreements, and 10 per region, the 2 about $500,000 each. And then there's some special considerations to note. We need to address climate, disaster resiliency, and emergency preparedness. This will be a high impact. We've seen cases with the fires in New Mexico and California. We've seen how hurricanes are affecting our Gulf Coast. So we're going to put an emphasis on those priorities. And then also performing health impact assessments. We're going to also focus on rural areas like the other agency was just describing. And the targeted for these RFAs is going to be October of 2022. And if you're nonprofit or U.S. territories, you're eligible for these grants. Now the SESHCA is going to be somewhat similar. However, we have a breakdown between state and local governments and the travel. These are the 2 tracks that we have. And the projects will be performed in rural areas. And we also have consideration for the health impact assessments. And again, if you're state, local government, and tribe, you're eligible for the SESHCAS. And the target for RFAs is in November of 2022. So with that, I tried to run over these as quickly as I could, just to try to stay with the time. And this is my information. And I think I'll pass the mic to Jose Gil Montañez from FEMA, unless I have time for questions.
Well, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jose Gil Montanez. I am a federal coordinating officer for FEMA Region 6, which are the 5 states of Texas, New Mexico, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Louisiana, and the 68 federally recognized tribes within that geographic boundary. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm just going to talk about 2 different considerations that I think would be appropriate for this audience. Then I'm going to pass it to 2 of my FEMA colleagues that are going to talk about the BRIC program, which is a building resilience program. That is another great opportunity for many of the local governments that you're working with. So first, I want to talk about the FIT teams, F-I-T. This is FEMA integration teams. What's really important about the FIT teams is these are FEMA employees that are based out of the different states in order to provide what we call steady state support to states, local governments, tribal nations outside of a disaster arena. Most of the time, you always hear FEMA after an event, and then you're having to coordinate with the Denton office in Texas if you're trying to seek resources or technical assistance outside of a disaster arena. But FEMA has postured themselves in order to have FEMA representatives available within the various states. And then we also have 2 what we call FIT team members that are designated for the tribal nations across Region 6. So if there's anyone that you want to speak to about some of those preparedness grants, any technical assistance on residual grant opportunities after a disaster, you definitely want to be able to reach out to a FEMA representative or even your state EOC, state emergency management representatives, and say, can I get in contact with the FIT team member, FIT? And you'll also have my contact information, and I can connect you with any of the FIT team members of the different states. Second, I wanted to talk about is interagency recovery coordination. So after a disaster, as a state or tribal nation is going through the response activities, we're trying to prepare for what are some of those considerations for recovery in order to support a local government, a state, tribal nation to become whole in recovery. And once again, that's not just the stakeholders within the emergency management sector. It definitely relies on the collaboration across different sectors of public health, economic, natural and cultural resources, infrastructure. So what we've done is we've built up an interagency coordination structure of different federal partners. And as Apu from EDA, he is the integrator, part of that IRC structure. We've built relationships, so when we have events like this to leverage resources, there's already a roster of interagency partners that can come and provide that technical assistance. And if we know that it's something that cannot be fleshed out through our authorities, we have partners, interagency partners that we can rely on to leverage their capabilities. So once again, this interagency recovery coordination is not just after disasters, but we do have capabilities of providing technical support and also addressing RFIs outside of disasters. So once again, those are two acronyms you want to put in your notes: FIT, the FEMA integration teams, and then IRC, interagency recovery coordination. And with that, I'm going to pass over to two of my colleagues. If you want to put up your slides, we have Marty Chester, who is the team lead for our hazard mitigation in Region 6. And then we also have Michael Koo, who is our mitigation advisor, part of that IRC structure in the field. So Marty and Michael, I'll pass the microphone over to you.
Hey guys, this is Marty. Two checks. Can you hear me and can you see what's on my screen?
Yes to both.
Cool. Hey, solving the world's problems. That's the two things we got to overcome. We got to make sure we hit today, right? So we're good, right? It's chocolate milk time, right? So I really wanted to talk to everyone today about a exciting new opportunity that we have on the hazard mitigation assistance side of the house. Typically, like Juan was talking about, is typically you hear of FEMA after an event rolls through, right? We have a flooding event, we have a fire event, whatever that event is, and then FEMA shows up. So what I want to talk to you today about is funding opportunities. We call it blue sky time whenever we're thinking there's not an active disaster or we're just coming out of a disaster. How do we better set ourselves up, our communities, and our citizens up for a better resiliency for next event, because we know that something's going to come next, right? So how do we better set ourselves up now to prepare for that? So what I'm going to talk to you a little bit today is about a building resilient infrastructure and communities. Like I talked about, how do we set our communities up for success? This is the program. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking through this. This is one of the things I get really passionate about, is how do we prevent? We can't really prevent a lot of things, but we can use the magic word mitigate losses. A lot of times, how do we lessen that impact? So this is one of the programs that we can do that with. Please stop me at any time if you have questions. Throw something at the screen, just let me know and I'll divert my attention. But this is a really important program that we have. But I want to talk about holistic programs. Okay, so I'm going to go to slide number 2. So in hazard mitigation assistance, we got two sides of the coin, if you will. I call it left Twix and right Twix, but we have disaster funding, which comes in right after a disaster, like Juan talked about. That's whenever we come in after a flooding event, fire event, whatever that is, and we support the response, recovery, and mitigation. On the other side of that coin, we have the annual non-disaster grants. I'm using air quotes here because it's focusing, preventing or lessening the impact of future events. We've got two programs that I want to highlight. The building infrastructure, building resilience and infrastructure, the BRIC program. This year, it is $2.3 billion. It's a lot of money. We also have the flood mitigation assistance program. That is $800 million. So if we put those two programs together nationwide, that's $3 billion towards community resilience. That is a lot of money that we can utilize to protect our communities, our citizens. So just want to give you a little holistic, because we talk a lot about HMGP, but also I want to bring in the non-disaster, the annual grants into the conversation. So let's turn our attention back on BRIC, okay? So what is a BRIC and how did it happen and what's going on with this? So you may have heard the acronym DRRA, and that stands for the Disaster Recovery Reform Act, and specifically section 1234. It's easy to remember. You can write that down, 1234, of the amended 203 Stafford Act. That's what developed BRIC. That's how BRIC was born, if you will. And I'm gonna give a little slide here in a moment about how that money works. But if you think of a disaster nationwide, every disaster nationwide, they don't take money out of that disaster to put into this one, but a cumulative amount. So say, for instance, if it's $5, a disaster happens and it's $5, 6% of that is going to come from a different pot of money and go into BRIC. So every disaster adds into the BRIC pot of money. We'll talk a little bit about eligibility, but I just want to give you a little bit on what is this BRIC thing and how does it work, right? So what are some highlights? It's the newest grant program that we have, and it replaces, you've probably heard of the pre-disaster mitigation, the PDM or PDMC program. It replaces that program with this program. Why? Why do we need to replace it? I'm glad you asked. Because this program right here, we're trying to shift the federal focus from more of a reactive, the HMGP, the PA, we come in after a disaster, to more of a proactive research base where we have a lot more research and design and implementing the projects that we do that can have resilience built in. It basically encourages a culture of resiliency. We look at our state partners in our local jurisdictions and like in Texas here, we have the North Central Texas Council of Governments that work with the local jurisdictions to help support those projects that they want to do. This incorporates all of those mechanisms and says, okay, hey guys, how do we work better together to lessen the impacts of the next event? This BRIC thing, what is that? We have some guiding principles, right? We want to talk about innovation. What things can we do that better innovate? We want to promote partnerships. A lot of times in our programs, in our projects across all federal agencies, not just FEMA, but all federal agencies, we look at one community, say the city of whatever, and I'm going to focus on that city, but I'm not really looking at outside those boundaries, right? So how do we increase partnerships with our jurisdictional friends to the left, to the right, north, and the south, right? Because as we know, fires, floods, any other disaster does not stop at that jurisdictional boundary. So how do we incorporate our partners, our jurisdictional partners that are around us into creating a holistic mitigation action? One of the things we also want to look at is capacity and capability. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment, but this is one of the few programs that FEMA has that really that puts a lot of effort and energy into building up that local jurisdiction's capacity and capability. Okay, moving on to this one really quick. This goes back, I call this the piggy bank slide. So we have a disaster that happens on the left-hand side, whatever that disaster is. That 6% of that money does not come out of that disaster, but it comes out of a different pot. That 6% is just a calculation. It gets funneled into a bank account, a BRIC bank account. And that's where the money comes from to support this program. So the goal is to have $0 in that account because we want to mitigate as many disasters as we possibly can over the years, but we're not there, right? So the goal is to work ourselves out of a job. That's what we're trying to do, but it's going to take us a while to get there. Who's eligible, right? So let's talk about eligibility. All 50 states, all of our tribal partners are federally recognized tribes and our wonderful friends in the District of Columbia. They're all eligible. As far as communities go, local jurisdictions, tribes, state agencies, and tribal agencies as well. For instance, I mentioned North Central Texas Council of Governments. They're an eligible sub-applicant, right? Because they're not a city, if you will, but they're a quasi-governmental agency. So same as with HMGP, it's basically the same eligibility requirements. One of the things I do want to talk about is the new funding cycle. You heard several people talk about the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That piece of legislation has released a lot of federal dollars into a lot of different grant programs, and BRIC is one of those. So like I talked about earlier, we've got almost $2.3 billion available. Last year it was $1 billion, so it's over double the amount of money that we have available. Each of our state and tribal recipients have up to $1 million in, we call it allocation. In HMGP, the closest we can reference that to is the 5% initiative. We can use those for planning related activities, capacity, capability, things. On the other side, we have the allocation, but we also have nationally competitive grant pot of money too. And that's available at 2.1 billion. So we have quite a bit of money out there for allocation, planning related activities, as well as hard projects, microgrids, drainage projects, those sorts of infrastructure projects as well. This is just a little breakdown of those, what is available for capacity and capability. One of the things I'm going to talk about on my next slide, let's just get to it, is when we talk about capacity and capability, what does that actually mean, right? What is that, right? So when we look at our local jurisdictions, what can we do to support our state partners and our local communities in building their capacity and capability? It's kind of like the rinse and repeat thing. If we keep coming in and fixing the same thing and then leaving, the same thing happened, we're not investing in our communities. So one of the attributes of the BRIC program is to help communities engage in building codes. The local jurisdiction has a thing called BSAG scores. It's basically a rating of that community on how well their building codes are in comparison to their hazards, right? We can have projects that are designed to help communities increase their building codes. I talked about partnerships a moment ago, right? We have projects that are designed directly to help communities reach out and talk to their neighbors. But we also got to look at our for-profit and our nonprofit community entities within our communities, right? We've got big box stores that are in our communities. How do we leverage those assets, right? We rarely talk, and especially in FEMA, we rarely talk about, hey, I'm going to go out to this big box store and I'm going to engage them and I'm going to see how they can assist the community that they serve as well in mitigating floods. So partnerships are a big part of what we do, and not just look at, oh, this is the city, we're going to fix this, but expand that out a little bit. Now, cost sharing. When we talk about HMGP, and a lot of the federal grants are like this, it's a 75% federal share and a 25% non-federal, right? That's typically across the board. In the BRIC program, when we're looking at grant management, right, at the local level, you got to pay staff to manage those grants, right? To report up to FEMA, you got to do reimbursements, you got to do your quarterly reports. Periodically, there's people that come by and want to meet with you about, how's this going and whatnot, right? You got to pay staff for that. Those subrecipient and at the state level as well, those management costs or subrecipient management costs are funded at 100% federal share. So there's no cost match or cost share related to subrecipient management costs or management costs. One of the things that we look at also in the BRIC program is economically disadvantaged rural communities, EDRCs. If you have a community that is designated as that, and that is the CDC definition, the Center for Disease Control, that's their definition of the economically disadvantaged. They're eligible for a 90-10 cost share instead of a 75. That could be huge. That can make or break that local jurisdiction's ability to submit. One of the other things we can look at is reduce that 10% down even further, is what we like to call in kind. So does that community have any resources that they can contribute to this project? Man hours, if we're doing a drainage project, if they have an engineer on staff, someone that can put time, effort, and energy into that project to even get that 10% down even lower. And I'm gonna go through my next two slides are on the competitive side of the house. Okay, so I'm gonna put this up, but I'm gonna talk through it. So on the competitive side of the house, we typically see a lot more requests for money than we do have for money available, right? So we get more money than money available. Our last cycle, we had $4 billion of requests for money, but we only had $1 billion in the bank account. So what FEMA does is look at, there's technical and qualitative things that to rank the applications. So for instance, in this one right here, this is a technical ranking. We have two rankings, technical and qualitative. And this is all in the Notice of Funding Opportunity announcement that's on grants.gov and on FEMA's website as well. We get extra points in an application if we incorporate certain things, right? So like I talked about, if we incorporate nature-based solutions right here, we get 10 points. Well, what does that look like, right? So if we're doing a drainage project, and instead of putting concrete on those sides, if we look at some sort of nature-based, something that we can put there, vegetation, some trees, something like that, that's going to be an anchor, that's going to be a benefit to nature, as opposed to just putting a bunch of concrete down. So when you're developing your applications, pay close attention to the points that we have in the Notice of Funding Opportunity and see how we can incorporate some of those. My next slide, and I only got 17 slides and we're almost done. I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to emphasize that whenever I talked a lot about leveraging partnerships. The reason I did that is because, as you can see on the slide, we can get 15 points if we talk and leverage our partnerships with our neighbors and within our community. It doesn't even have to be a government agency. the big box stores. How do we leverage our partnerships with them? Also, like I mentioned, look around to your neighbors as well to see if we're talking about climate change and future conditions, right? So one of the things that that we look at in cities is called the heat island effect, right? So when we have a large amount of concrete and we put more concrete there, it's going to raise the temperature. So when we're looking at doing a drainage project in the middle of a city, if we can incorporate partnerships, if we can incorporate climate resilience, future and nature-based solutions, that's a lot of points in one project to get us to be able to get an award. So looking at your projects, looking at incorporating partnerships, nature-based solutions, future conditions, things like those will get you extra points. And not just looking at, I'm just going to put a bunch of concrete down. I highly encourage you guys to go to grants.gov, FEMA.gov, and look at the notice of funding opportunity. There's a lot of interesting and really insightful information in there. There's a lot of job aid, support materials, things like that. Really want to hit on nature-based solutions, right? So proactive ways that we can work with our built environment that's going to add to nature itself, right? Like I mentioned, adding trees to reduce the heat island effect, adding vegetation on the side of an embankment in order to, I call it the critter effect, but it's actually, if we put a bunch of vegetation on the side of a bank, it's soil stabilization, but it's also increasing the natural habitat of birds, of all the critters that are in the area as well. How do you apply? This is the biggest thing, right? How do I get this thing that this guy's been talking about is really excited about, right? So the FEMA application on the federal side, it's going to open up on the 30th. It's going to open up for everybody on the 30th. We use a system called FEMA Go. And on the FEMA side, we must receive those by January 27th. But please remember, that's the federal deadline. We need to make sure that our local jurisdictions should contact their state hazard mitigation officer for additional information. And here's a bunch of links. I've sent the PowerPoint along with all these links. And there's a lot of good information in here. Click around. You will not, after you look at this, you would not say, I wasted my time. You will say, wow, I need another pen because I ran out of ink. There's so much good information here. All right, I'm going to stop for now. I'm going to, is there any questions?
Great, thanks so much, Marty. And we'll have some time for some questions afterwards as well. We really appreciate your presentation today and being with us.
All right, thank you guys so much.
Thanks. And we'd like to move on to, we have Lillian Salerno from USDA. Lillian, are you there?
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Happy to be on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Let me share my screen. I'm Lillian Salerno. I'm the state director for USDA. Our state office is in Temple, but I actually come from the North Texas area from a little town called Little Elm. So happy to be on the call and want to go over some of the programs we have here at USDA. Let me share my screen. USDA is a big old federal agency with about 95,000 employees, and we're the best mission area by far, called rural development. And we're basically the folks that go around and make sure that small town USA, because of its importance to the economy as well as the ag economy, stays resilient and healthy. And so we administer over, oh, hold on one second. Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Lynn, we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, somebody's. Participants can now see my screen. Great. And I just want to give a brief overview. Some of you all know, some of the folks on this call know about it because I know we've granted money to you all. And basically, we're administer 40 programs. We support rural communities, and we have a portfolio of about $220 billion. Sometimes when folks are like, what? I didn't know USDA was a bank. Yes, we are. I tell people we're like the World Bank, but much better, but for rural America. And we do a big host of federally guaranteed loans, as well as some grants, not as many grants as we used to have in the old days. Let me advance this. Here we go. We basically have 4 regions, 47 state offices, 400 area office, and a $234 billion loan portfolio where we, in Texas, we have over, I guess, 25 offices in 9 areas. Big state, over 100 employees. One of the things that we have that's certainly been challenged over the last 2 years with COVID is we're a forward-facing agency. So with our sister agencies like Farm Service Agency and the natural NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Area. I mean, USDA has a lot of people on the ground ready to serve us Texans, and we're usually co-located around the state. The kind of businesses and community facilities opportunities we guarantee business loans as well as rural energy loans. Because of the recent passage on August 16th of the Inflation Reduction Act, there's the USDA got quite a bit of money, mostly for climate and resilience and conservation. And some of that money is going through this part of the agency, rural development, to guarantee and grant money for energy efficiency. And so this is pretty exciting in places that for those on the phone who have businesses in their communities, this program, we've been giving out money under this program for a lot of years, but always a challenge was for businesses to be able to come up with the match requirement. Under the new Inflation Reduction Act and the way we've interpreted it, we now have, we're able to give 50% match, which sort of changes the ballgame. And that's basically for everything that we already know, which is, for climate change and energy efficiency, for ag producers as well as small business. What we know in rural Texas is we've got a lot of small businesses all around our great state that still have the old refrigeration, the old lighting, and really not enough of an income stream to do it, but for the government stepping in and helping. And so that's what we're here for. We also have value-added producer grants that go to ag producers that do any kind of a value add to their products. Think a tomato farmer, a tomato grower who turns it into salsa. We give money for that. We also have intermediary lending programs, which is basically just a way to keep capital into these rural communities. Sometimes there's no bank in this communities. And so we work with CDFIs and other intermediaries to set up opportunities for money to flow. We give money, other people loan the money out. We also have very little grant money, but the one we do is in a very effective grant called the Rural Economic Development Grant Program. It also has a loan component, and we've worked with COGS before, as well as community colleges and other nonprofits. And it's basically a technical assistance grant that gives people the opportunity to sort of assess what they want to apply for and look at the benefits or challenges faced by a small community. And we give money for a written document that sort of is a planning grant on whatever isolated issue that one wants to do. Those have been effective. We work with alongside and inside some of the universities in around Texas regarding this, that have sort of the intellectual capacity to sort of know what's in the community. And they come up with great reports, and they do very good sort of mini city planning or rural city planning. We also have rural cooperative development grants and a host of others that are specific for ag producers. The types of projects that we fund are, what you think about in a small town, which usually they need a hotel. We hope there's manufacturing. We're big on manufacturing for that. We're trying to get manufacturing back, and we have loan guarantees to help with that. We basically, whatever the town needs, where they have a business plan that works, the commercial industry in that town contacts us. Again, we don't have very many grants for small businesses, but sometimes they work alongside, some other piece of funding from the federal government, and then we come in and just do the loan guarantee. So our customer is really the lender. We also do loans for big for the Rural Energy for America program, where we're funding energy efficiency equipment. And a lot of this is for ag producers, but also for small business, for solar. And again, we usually work where we're coming in and backing the lender and or a nonprofit for these kind of loans. We provide some technical assistance regarding businesses and how to use their working capital. The purpose of our rural development grants and our purpose for our rural development loans, again, is just to create industry. Some of these small towns really got hit, obviously, during COVID. There's been we really haven't figured out what COVID means for rural Texas or rural America, frankly. We know that they got hit hard. The communities, everything in a small town. So we're trying to assess, where we show up there and what we can do to create more community and opportunities for investment in these towns. The purpose of everything we do is to try to create more vibrant communities. When I go around the state and visit, municipalities and city managers and mayors, always so incredibly impressed on people's vision for their town. They create, opportunities that, but for some key person in that community wouldn't have existed. For example, in Central Texas, a veteran, former pilot and airplane mechanic was able to, because of his, just as a community member, because of his vision that kids ought to be able to not just go to college, but also learn how to do mechanics and fly. We have such a shortage of pilots that between him and the mayor, they came up with a vision for what they call a flight community. And so we invested in a hangar that now, people are coming out to, and now they're working with the Air Force and others to sort of create this vision where they work with the high school and create opportunities, take kids around that have never been up in planes and get them interested in flying for pilots, which we need a pipeline for, as well as mechanics. So you see some pretty cool things out there. Rural Energy for America program, I've already talked about. We got this, I think, the bump in the budget for, this is national, but Texas, because of our size, we get a big chunk of it. I think it's around $2 billion. We haven't gotten all the, we know the amount, but we don't know how the implementation goes. But that's sort of a game changer for some of these communities, and we'd really like to work with folks that are interested in helping us get this money out. The kind of projects that we do for this rural energy program, or everything you can think of, some creative folks out there that are doing biomass. Obviously we have wind here in Texas, lots of solar, geothermal. We fund anything that can help us, reduce carbon. Let's see, just for the specifics on the rural energy program, because that's what we have a lot of money that we're trying to get out. We have a minimum grant request of $2,500. It goes up to $500,000. The big change is that we can now do these big, help by giving these big 50% grants. So that's a big game changer for the community. In fact, this slide's wrong. It says 25%, but now it's up to 50%. So that's just changed with this passage of this IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. The other piece that's new to USDA that some of the folks on the phone in North Texas are probably familiar with is that we are very interested as a country and very worried about the concentration in the meat and poultry industry, not enough players. You know, it's one of those things where people thought they were going to get back to it. And then all of a sudden we went from having thousands of meat producers and meat processors in this country, where then we ended up with 4 for the whole country. And so this administration has put their money where their mouth is and said, you know, that we need to do something about that. It's dangerous as a country. That's part of the reason your food prices, and especially around meat and poultry, are as high as they are, is because of concentration. Will become a bank for these kind of folks that want to get into this market, as well as, you know, small grants. So in Texas, it's sort of a big deal for all kinds of reasons. There's, you know, we have a huge cattle industry, and so not everyone loves us about this, but we're out there promoting this, and it's a brand new program. Nobody knows about it, and it's chock full of money. There's actually one part of it that's up to a $25 million grant, which is significant. So this is our first year doing it. We don't know how it's going to go, but we certainly are getting applications and would like people to promote that for us. The context again is that, you know, these meat processors control the market, 85% of the beef market and 70% of the pork market and 54% of the poultry market. And it's just basically made it so the pricing is just untenable for regular families. So we're promoting small farmers. We're hoping that this will help us, because if no one can process their product, then, you know, they can't compete. So this is interesting. In Texas, it's very interesting because we have huge, you know, concentration here in Texas. We're one of those 4 is here in Texas. And so that's something that we really want to make sure you know, these kind of outfits, you know, appear in rural America because of ranching and ag. So, and then the other program we have, and I guess I got to go quicker. We have community facilities programs, which are basically government stepping in when a small town Texas needs a essential facility, whether it be a fire station or a fire truck or a police car, or it can be a job training center. Very creative on these things. We have supported a lot of fire trucks and police cars here in Texas. There's all kinds of eligible entities. We have not a lot of grant money. We sort of do a piece of a grant and a loan where we come in and secure the loan. And we've been doing that and have lots of our $240 billion portfolio. A percentage of it is in small town Texas, where we're the guarantor on water systems and community facilities. They can be used, these funds can be used for whatever the community thinks is important for their town, whether it be public safety or local food systems. They can even be for community gardens and food pantries. And we've seen that here in Texas, and really great projects, actually. We also come in and support water and environmental programs. The water, because of where we are, not just here in Texas, but everywhere, is a big deal. Funding reliable drinking water systems and sewers systems. And basically the town makes sure that they have a revenue by their, you know, community so that we can support the payback of the loan. I was in a town last week where it was only 220 citizens in the town. So that didn't seem like enough revenue, but when you look at it and look at the kind of terms that the government, that the USDA gives, it was worth it. And we paid for their water system, which had been producing pretty unhealthy water. And the water and environmental programs, state and local government entities can apply as well as private and nonprofits. We've had obviously water boards we've given quite a bit of money to, and again, federally recognized tribes. And then we have a housing portfolio. Basically, this part of the government is saying, what does a community need? Well, it needs housing, and people can't afford housing, especially lately. And so we give loans, very little grant, for direct loans and secure people's homes that qualify. We also pay for some rents in multifamily housing units, which were very scarce on those in small town. We've got a home ownership problem in rural Texas like we do in the rest of Texas. We have direct loans where they're owner occupied, where people don't make enough money to afford it. We provide payment subsidies up to 100% financing. And then we also have guaranteed loans. Our challenge is, like everybody else, is that the housing prices have gone up. So even with our help, some folks, it's still unaffordable. And then we also give money for folks to fix up their homes, up to $40,000 loans. And those are great projects where you see people that have just take such pride in their home, and maybe they don't have an opportunity to do anything on the climate issue. And then we can go in there with a certain kind of upgrades that helps them with their electric bills and others, and septic and electrical, and handicap retrofit for folks. A lot of our older residents are in these 504 loans and grants to receive that. And then everybody's been talking about broadband. We've got our version for rural, and it's basically, it's called Reconnect. There were 3 phases of Reconnect before, and we just announced our Reconnect 4 round, which the applications process is open on September 6th and closes on November 2nd. And it's basically what we all know is trying to get those communities of less than 20,000 people connected. We made an announcement about 4 weeks ago of 4 around Texas that we've given, I don't know, somewhere in the $80 million worth out. And then this round, it's about $1 billion. So USDA's put out, almost $2 billion into the Reconnect programs. And, it's tough here in Texas. We've got geography that's not conducive for fiber, but that we have to do, like in Central Texas with limestone and quarry rock. And so some of those projects but for the government stepping in, there's no way communities can afford these kind of upgrades in internet. And that's it. And I'm available if anybody wants. I guess the slide deck's available, but one thing, we have about 100 people across the state that work in this part of the agency, and they're there to serve, and they're happy to answer your questions. And in the North Texas area, we have offices in McKinney and Decatur, and that's it, McKinney and Decatur. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Lillian. Could you define how does the USDA define rural?
Very good question. It's basically depends on the program. There's like an eligibility criteria. When you're talking on like big dollar stuff like water, broadband, then it's 20,000 or less. When you're talking about 20,000 residents or less. And when you're talking about things like community facilities, business loans, it's 50,000 people or less. So it's like the big money goes to the really small towns, and the other kind of opportunities go to the bigger. And then, of course, there's all kinds of exceptions depending on regionally about poverty and things like that. So we literally have an eligibility criteria, scanner that goes in that tells us what things qualify for. And then for tribes and colonias, there's a whole different criteria, which is much more favorable on their eligibility regarding population.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. I think I'm going to storm through the EDA presentation just in the interest of time, and so that we can make sure to get some question and answers in as well by the end. So I'll share my screen. Let's see here. Let's see. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And also, I think just in the interest of everyone probably having federal agency fatigue at this point, we'll go through this really quickly. And I think a lot of you may be familiar with EDA and some of our programs already. So I'll also mention that I've been in Austin for 13 years. But prior to that, I'm born and raised in the North Texas area. So very much home to me, and all of my family still lives there. So EDA is also under the U.S. Department of Commerce. And long-term sustainable jobs and growing our economy, is the big picture goals of the EDA. Now, this, contrary to a lot of there's a lot of misinformation out there that EDA, the eligible applicants for EDA, I think EDA cannot fund private individuals or private organizations. These are, I'd say the majority of our eligible applicants are our economic development districts, but certainly nonprofit organizations, local state governments are eligible applicants.
Okay.
Yes.
We're not seeing the full slide. We're seeing the next slide and your current slide. So it's a bit hard to read the text.
I think it's the same thing is happening to me, huh? That was happening to Jennifer. Is this?
I think one of those bottom, that one maybe, I think goes.
Okay. Is that?
Actually, that didn't do it.
Is that doing it? No. Okay, let me try that. No. Yeah, it's really strange. Maybe it's because I don't know. Okay.
It's okay. I know we have, we're short on time.
We're short. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Apologize. So these are the main programs that we have. I'd say, if you had to list the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the EDA, it's probably our infrastructure, our construction projects, it's public works. Since the EDA started in the 60s under the Kennedy administration, probably every community in the country has benefited from some infrastructure improvement that from the EDA. But now we're starting to see more and more non-construction and national competitions. Build to scale is a new one that is growing larger and larger, not only in terms of dollars, but also I think in popularity. It's a program in which to help businesses, small businesses grow to medium-sized businesses, medium-sized grow to become bigger. And it's gotten a lot of positive feedback, and we're just seeing it continue to grow. So just some of your examples here. Public works, this is under economic adjustment assistance, and it is exactly what it is, what it describes. It's dollars and projects to help improve some of our public infrastructure. Our broadband infrastructure is a big part of it right now, and with our partner organization NTIA to try to expand broadband throughout the country. And I've been speaking a little bit about EAA. It's our, if you will, meat and potatoes again of the EDA. These are all various things that EAA can fund, and certainly if your community is interested in these, we'd like to schedule, and I'll talk a little bit about how to do that. So Stacy Webb is our economic development representative for the area, both for the North Central Texas area and Oklahoma. And so when it comes to strategizing, planning, putting in an application for any of our programs, she's going to be your point of contact, who you want to contact in order to, kind of start putting those together, start looking at strategically what kind of things to do. I'm the economic development integrator for Lawson Regional Office. So putting together these sorts of REDS expense or making connections to whether it be an EDA project or any of our other federal partners, whether it be some of the ones that you talked with on this call or other ideas that you have to bridge some of those gaps maybe that you have for your community. I'm also a good resource to contact and happy to do that. Generally, if you provide coffee, I'll agree to come to your meeting wherever it may be in our region. Really, we just want to make it very clear that this, we have multiple resources Even though EDA is a pretty small agency, it's one of the smallest agencies. One of the things that I really like about the agency is that we're really willing to give a lot of guidance and a lot of assistance as it comes to either helping to connect you to a project or connecting you to resources. So I know that we're really close to the end here on time, but definitely want to open up to some questions that you have for any of our panelists today. And so we will, you can either just raise your hand or just unmute yourself and go directly to that.
Does anyone have any questions for APU, for EDA, the USDA, the EPA, or FEMA? I'm not seeing any, but we really just want to thank all of you, APU and Stacy, and then the USDA, FEMA, EPA, and NTIA. I know Jennifer's had to leave the call, for being available today, for sharing all of this information and resources to the region. As you said, APU, when you set up the meeting, everyone's still dealing with a lot of recovery, and all of these resources and information are very helpful to our local governments and our school districts, our colleges and universities. And I see a question, will you provide their contact information? We will share contact information for all the agencies, so that if you want to reach out to them directly and ask questions, that can certainly happen. And as Apu said, these RES, these economic development summits, if this is something you're interested in bringing to your area or to your county or to multiple counties, he and we will certainly help you make that a reality.
Yeah, and I was also just give you and Lucille, Prit, you and Lucille a lot of credit as well, because, you know, I helped to just make some suggestions in terms of connections with other agencies, but really North Central Texas COG was responsible for putting all this together. And so they're a fantastic resource. And I think, you know, if one of your communities or would like to host something similar to this, certainly can get together with them to help coordinate, or with myself, Stacy as well. So yeah. I think a lot of times just getting your foot into the door with just all the complexities, it can be overwhelming with federal resources and just how many there are and who to contact and just getting into all that. So sometimes just help with getting your foot into the door is part of, you know, just a really big part of that process. And so that's what we want to help to do.
Apu, I really want to thank you for helping us to get this put together. And Prit, thank you. And Stacy, thank you for bringing it to us so that we could be aware of this. This is awfully great dialogue for us to have with the folks in our region, particularly as we're looking for funding sources and how they work and so forth. So we are really appreciative of your time today. And a special thanks to Prit for putting all of this together and getting information out to you guys to log on and so forth. So we are very appreciative of all of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We wish everyone a great work week, and we hope to see you at a future meeting or a webinar, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Prit, tell them, guys, we will be on next week on the 8th.
Yeah, so just for whoever's still on, we do have the Texas Broadband Development Office webinar that's going to be presented on September 8th. That's a Thursday. The information's on our COG website, but the Texas BDO is going to be talking about their role with broadband funding and how locals can be involved with that. All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.